So I just came across this, which I found quite interesting. One of these headlines is misleading, I think, because it says military bans DNA testing kits for soldiers. And I don't think they actually banned it in the end. I think it's a security concern, right? So I'm going to look at the one for the New York Times. So this was in December of 2019, and the Pentagon sent out a memo warning military personnel against at-home DNA tests from companies such as 23andMe and Ancestry. And the reason being that, bear with, I just, so first paragraph, warning that they create security risks, are unreliable and could negatively affect service members' careers. Straight from the Pentagon's mouth, they're unreliable. What? We want to ensure all service members are aware of the risks of direct-to-consumer genetic testing. Over the past decade, millions of Americans have purchased DNA tests through companies such as 23andMe and Ancestry. And the spokesperson is Commander Robertson. So one concern is the unintentional discovery of markers that may affect readiness, could affect a service member's career, and the information from DTC genetic testing may disclose this information. No, let me read that whole paragraph. Commander Robertson said that the tests might provide inaccurate results and have negative professional consequences. For example, if you discovered something preparing for a medical, and you discovered a medical problem through that, it might be that test wasn't accurate in the first place. What the hell? Genetic tests have more serious employment implication for members of the military than the average office worker, said Frederick Bieber. Might have serious implications for the average office worker if they were to get accused of a quadruple homicide, or the average PhD student. So said Frederick Bieber, an associate professor of pathology at Harvard Medical School who served as an Army Reserve officer at the DNA Identification Lab. I bet the military I just know that the military is involved in this in some way. Actually, I do know that to an extent, but I don't know to what extent at the moment. The Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, known as GINA, prohibits discrimination by health insurers and employers based on the information that people carry in their genes. It does not apply to members of the military, however. The military can make decisions about operational readiness, Dr. Bieber said, whereas in the civilian world, there are prohibitions about it. The memo was written by Joseph D. Kernan, the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and James N. Stewart, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower. They warn that the tests could expose personal and genetic information and potentially, don't know, I had trouble with that then, create unintended security consequences and increase risk to the joint force and mission. The memo does not get into what specifically these risks might be, and Commander Robertson declined to elaborate. In a statement, a spokeswoman from 23andMe said the company took great care to protect customers' privacy. Our FDA-authorized health reports have been tested to be over 99% accurate, she said. All our testing is done in the US and we do not share information with third parties without separate, explicit consent from our customers. An Ancestry spokeswoman said that the military had not targeted military personnel with discounts. Ancestry does not share customer DNA data with insurers, employers, or third-party marketers, she added. The Pentagon does not advise against genetic testing altogether, but service members were encouraged to get genetic information from a licensed professional rather than a consumer product. What, don't we trust these companies? Well, let's hope we didn't use them then. Interesting, eh? Otherwise, you're going against what the Pentagon says. The Pentagon. However you want to say it. So, found that rather interesting. You heard it here first. The Pentagon is concerned about the reliability of 23andMe and Ancestry. What do they refer to it as? Direct-to-consumer genetic testing. And here is the actual memo itself. You can Google it. Just put in 2019 Pentagon Memo DNA and click on images. So, as you can see, the date, 20th of December 2019, signed by Joseph D. Kernan, Under Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, and James N. Stewart, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, performing the duties of the Under Secretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. Okay, so subject, direct-to-consumer genetic testing advisory for military members. It has come to the attention of the DoD that some direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies are encouraging DoD personnel to purchase genetic ancestry and health information through the offering of military discounts or other incentives. These direct-to-consumer genetic tests are largely unregulated and could expose personnel and genetic information and potentially create unintended security consequences and increased risk to the joint force and mission. Exposing sensitive genetic information to outside parties poses personal and operational risks to service members. Direct-to-consumer genetic tests that provide health information have varying levels of validity, and many are not reviewed by the Food and Drug Administration before they are offered, meaning they may be sold without independent analysis. to verify the claims of the seller. Possible inaccuracies pose more risk to DoD military personnel than the public due to service well, as I said, it depends. If you're going to start using them to have people face the death penalty, then the consequences are pretty significant. Due to service member requirements to disclose medical information that affects readiness, see DoD Instruction 602519, individual medical readiness. Testing outside the military health system is unlikely to include a clear description of this risk. Moreover, there is increased concern in the scientific community that outside parties are exploiting the use of genetic data for questionable purposes, including mass surveillance and ability to track individuals without their authorization or awareness. Well, they probably bought Brian Koberger's DNA from the Russians or something. Do they buy it from China? I mean, I'm not slating any of these countries, but this sounds like they're suggesting that another country has infiltrated. I mean, if they're worried about mass surveillance, then surely they're not worried about their own mass surveillance. They're worried about mass surveillance from another country. So, including mass surveillance and the ability to track individuals without their authorization or awareness. What the actual fuck? Until notified otherwise, DoD military personnel are advised to refrain from the purchase and or use of DTC genetic services. I wonder if there's been any update on this. So what I had been wondering was whether the military collect DNA samples from servicemen, and according to this guy, George Hustard, they do. So, what year did the military start collecting DNA samples on servicemen? In the mid-1990s, I think about 1996, they took our DNA samples. So I have seen a background check. I've had access to a background check through the company Being Verified, which is verified by CCMO. You may have heard of her. Let me just give you a little clip. So she's a genetic genealogist. You might have heard of her. She was on the Presumption podcast, which is on YouTube, and I'm just going to play a clip of that. And she worked on a lot of different criminal cases. The murder of Tanya Van Kylenborg in Snohomish County, Washington, and then a case in Pennsylvania, Raymond Rowe, a sexual assault case. Tacoma, Washington, Gary Hartman, that was a rape case. A Texas case, it's a cold case. I thought that she was involved in the Angie Dodge case. All these cases. Was she not involved in the Angie Dodge? Or she might have been, it's further on. Hold on, I need to know. What year was it though? Idaho, yeah, Angie Dodge. Brian Lee Drips confessed to the sexual assault and murder by stabbing in 1996. Yeah, he was wrong. Well, he only confessed after being harassed into it. But they got DNA of somebody else. And then years later, this is where they identified the wrong person with genetic genealogy. I don't know if she was involved in that. And then they found the right person. But yeah, she seems to have done a lot in that sort of part of the world. Look, it's Washington again. So she says she wasn't involved in this case, but who knows? But let me just play the clip that I bet I won't be able to find it now. So this is just a short clip from the Presumption podcast. And I thought I just wanted to show you that she says what records she uses, and she confirms that she uses being verified. And so obviously she considers it a reliable source. But actually, I just came across this clip as well, and it's less than 2 minutes. And it's probably stuff you already know, but I don't know, I find it compelling hearing it straight from the genealogist's mouth, really. Just literally what she says in the last few seconds, really, but it's just leads up to it. So just a quick clip here.
And so as the technology becomes more and more sensitive, we obviously have to use more and more discretion as to whether that's actually tying someone to a crime. And that's why I emphasize my job is just to identify that DNA contributor. It's not to say someone's guilty. It's to say, I think this is your DNA contributor. Now you need to go do the investigation and determine whether that person is potentially your suspect or if it's just someone who left their DNA. I use more and more discretion.
So just someone who left their DNA, or if it's just someone who left their DNA, because somebody can just leave their DNA, which seems to be really hard for some people to get their heads around. But I think it's just because like people don't know much about it, do they? Unless they're not everybody's interested in true crime. Even those that are interested in true crime don't always watch some people might consider themselves to be interested in true crime, and they're just watching real trashy true crime. Do you know what I mean? They're not like looking at the good stuff, and they might not be interested in wrongful conviction, so they might not know much about that side of things. But like I've said before, I've been involved for quite some time, and it's only recently that I've sort of disengaged from it, because they've gone on to missing person cases, and I just started doing this YouTube channel and other things that have been the reason why I've stopped engaging with it. But it was like crowdsourced investigation, and you get the whole file, the whole case file for like cold cases, so with everything in it, and they just have experts on there and go to so much detail. And I've mentioned this podcast before, Truth and Justice podcast, and there's loads of seasons of it. I was interested originally in because I think it was either because they covered West Memphis 3, or it might have been Adnan Syed, that one of those that drew me in. But then there's lots of cases that I hadn't come across, and actually I found them more interesting in the end, and I kind of disagreed. To be honest, one of the reasons I sort of moved away from it, it was because I sort of the host I just didn't always agree with, and I kind of ended up getting a bit wound up about that. Like some of, well, you'd have to watch it anyway. So he like his intentions were honourable, I'd say. It's just I don't know. I didn't feel like he was. I felt like he was overlooking some possible suspects just because, I don't know, maybe because he didn't feel they fit the bill without actually looking at them, which is kind of confirmation bias in and of itself. But then I'm one of those people who's literally no stone unturned. I will look at everybody to the, everybody's a suspect kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I digress. So yeah, she says here,
than others. We use newspaper archives. We use social media. We use people search databases like, say, White Pages Premium, Ben Verified.
there you go, she calls it Ben Verified, Being Verified. So yeah, moving on to what I was talking about then. So yeah, CCMO verifies being verified. So it's a reliable source. The thing that I notice with it is that sometimes the information is incomplete. So it's not that you're given, because I've sort of cross-referenced to check that information is reliable, but sometimes there's just not complete information. Like sometimes somebody in the family might not be on there, and in this case Brian's mum isn't on being verified. When I look up Brian, his mum's not there, and I was wondering if maybe, was it that she wasn't? Yeah, she's not on there. And some people request that they have their information taken down. But I have seen that when someone's done that before, usually just all the categories are empty. Their name is still there, but she's not on there. But having said that, Stephen Gonzalez, the son, so Steve Gonzalez the third, as in Kaylee's brother, isn't on there either, so I don't know. But anyway, so Mum wasn't on there, and it made me think, oh, well, are they actually together? Maybe. And so I looked at the house, right, to see if her name was on there, because you can see the deeds and all that. And the house had been so we'd call it remortgaged, refinanced a few times, I think. And one of the times was with a veteran loan. So it shows the lender, basically. And it was a VA company. And so that made me think, well, somebody's either in the military, somebody's been in the military in that family. So it could be another family member who's helped them out, maybe. Or it could be that Michael used to be in the military. Or it could be that we haven't been given the full information on Brian Kohberger. And one thing I will say is that DeSales University, the course that he did was online. And I looked to see if you can study and be in the military at the same time, and you can. And also one thing that's really weird is that I have seen, obviously we all think that he's been security guard at a school for a long time, because otherwise there's a bit of a gap in his education. Like, but there's got to be some work, some employment in between, and we're led to believe that he was a security guard at the school. But obviously you don't know that that's been the whole time, or it's hard to know how reliable any of the information is. But then I saw another article, and it said so had read that he went to Northampton College, and I remembered that because there's a place called Northampton in the UK, and that's where I went to university. So I remembered it. And then I saw another article which had him at a different college, and it had him working as having left a course and training with HVAC, a plumbing company, and as an HVAC worker, or sorry, I don't really know what HVAC is. It's something to do with plumbing. It's not something that I'm aware of in the UK. Maybe it does exist over here, I don't know. So I'm like, oh, this is weird. There's two different sets of information here. And I have always wondered about some kind of military link, and the fact that things have been kept on the quiet, and the fact that Steve Gonsalves said that there is a commonality between Brian Kohberger, between the defendant and Bill Thompson. And so I looked up information about Bill Thompson, and I was suspecting, what I found was that his father was in the military. And the other things, I couldn't find anything else that I could see as a commonality between them. And I wondered if that was it, that both their fathers were in the military, or there's some kind of military link, is what I think could be the case. So I am wondering if they accessed his DNA through the military, and they're saying that they got it did it through genetic genealogy, and hence all the secretiveness, because it's not just the FBI who are being secretive, it's also the military are involved, possibly. So yeah, wondering about that. And something interesting as well that I just came across before the memo was so have you heard of Brandon Mayfield? So Brandon Mayfield was wrongly arrested by the FBI for the 2004, I don't know which one to go for, the terrifying surveillance case of Brandon Mayfield. So basically, his fingerprint had been entered into an FBI database, was in one of 20 fingerprints in an FBI database, identified that, let me just, hold on, let me find... I'm just going to read it because I don't want to mess it up. So, mistaken identity. On March the 11th, 2004, Al-Qaeda inspired terrorists coordinated a massive bombing of the Madrid commuter train, so in Spain, commuter train system during the morning rush hour, killing 193 people and wounding approximately 1,800. 2 latent fingerprints recovered during the investigation on a bag of detonators by the Spanish National Police were shared with the FBI through Interpol. When the prints were run through the Bureau's database, it returned 20 possible matches for one of the fingerprints, one of whom was Brandon Mayfield, a former US Army platoon leader. Mayfield was now an attorney specialising in child custody, divorce and immigration law in Portland, Oregon. His prints were in the FBI system because of Mayfield's military service, as well as an arrest 2 decades earlier because of a misunderstanding. The charges were later dropped. So, yeah, that's why I sort of was kind of interested as to whether then I thought, well, do the military collect DNA as well? And then I came across that memo. So, yeah, I thought this case was quite interesting, and I will put it into, I'll pin it into the comments as well, because this is pretty interesting. That's a big fuck up by the FBI, isn't it? And that's on the basis of fingerprints. And they found the Spanish police found somebody else for who they believe who was convicted in the end. And this guy was released. So, yeah, the NSA overreach. Nobody is safe from confirmation bias. Interesting, eh? Check it out.